When I returned from the hospital, my house was gone and my life was packed into cardboard boxes on the sidewalk. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 63, a retired school teacher who thought she'd seen enough of life's surprises. Turns out I hadn't. 1 week earlier, I'd been rushed into emergency surgery. The doctor said I'd almost died from an infection that spread too fast. I spent those days in a fog of painkillers and IV drips, clutching my phone, waiting for a message from my only son, Ethan. But it never came. Neither did a visit, a text, or even a short, "How are you, Mom?" When the cab finally turned onto my quiet street, I looked out the window and felt something twist inside me. There, right in the middle of my rose garden, stood a bright red "Sold" sign. The same garden my late husband Tom had planted 25 years ago. The same porch where we used to drink coffee every Sunday morning. The driver helped me out, his eyes soft with concern. "You sure this is the right address, ma'am?" I couldn't answer. My gaze had already fixed on the porch lined with cardboard boxes, my handwriting on each one, Mom scrawled in thick black marker. A white envelope sat on top. Inside were 2 words in my son's familiar handwriting, "Handle it." I stood there for a long time, the Florida humidity clinging to my skin, my stitches aching beneath my blouse. I opened the first box, old photo albums, then a chipped mug with Tom's name on it, the one he used every morning until the day he died. My knees nearly gave out. I called Ethan. He picked up on the second ring, his voice calm, rehearsed. "We sold the house, Mom. You need assisted living. It's for your own good." My pulse roared in my ears. "You what?" I whispered. "It's done," he said. "Laura packed your things. You can call the facility tomorrow. They're expecting you." Facility. Like I was an item to be processed. I sat on the porch steps surrounded by my life in boxes and understood my own son had erased me. Not because I was cruel, not because I was careless, but because I'd stopped being convenient. That night, I dragged my old mattress back inside the hollow house. The rooms echoed. Every breath hurt from the stitches in my side to the crack in my chest. I lay there staring at the ceiling, tracing shadows that looked like the ghosts of everything I'd lost: my husband, my home, and maybe my son. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, as the pain medicine wore off and reality settled in, I made myself a promise. If they believed I was weak, I would prove them wrong. Helen showed up before noon the next day, still in her gardening gloves, her hair tucked under a straw hat. We'd taught together for 15 years, and she'd always had that mix of tough love and common sense that could slice through any crisis. She took one look at me sitting on the living room floor among half-empty boxes and said, "If you're not dead, you're not done." I almost laughed, and that tiny crack of humor was enough to let her pull me to my feet. Within an hour, she'd packed my suitcase, locked the door behind us, and driven me to her small farmhouse on the edge of town. That night, lying in her guest room with clean sheets and the smell of lavender, I let myself believe I might survive this. The next morning over coffee, I told her everything, every detail about Ethan, the boxes, the note. When I finished, Helen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You need to call David Carter." David had been my late husband, Tom's financial advisor for years, the kind of man who spoke in patient, careful sentences and always brought cookies to appointments. I hadn't spoken to him since Tom's funeral. When David answered, his voice was steady as ever. "Grace, what on earth happened?" he asked after I explained. I could almost hear him pushing his glasses up his nose, thinking. Then he said something that changed everything. "Do you remember the insurance policy Tom took out before he passed? The one you didn't touch?" I froze. I had nearly forgotten it. A modest policy Tom had insisted on keeping separate for emergencies. David had invested the payout quietly, letting it grow over the years. He sent me the updated numbers that afternoon. When I opened the email, I gasped. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to start over without asking anyone for help. David met us at a cafe 2 days later. He looked at me over his cup and said, "Grace, you have something most people your age don't: options. Let's make sure no one can ever take them from you again. We opened new accounts in my name, only closed the joint ones Ethan could access, and moved every cent into a protected trust. For the first time in months, I felt control settle back into my bones. But the question of my house still burned. I needed to know how they'd sold it without me. David recommended an attorney, Patricia Wells, a woman who specialized in elder law. Patricia listened quietly as I told my story, jotting notes with the precision of someone who'd heard this kind of betrayal too many times. When she reviewed the sale documents, her expression hardened. She slid the papers toward me and pointed to my signature. "This isn't yours," she said. "It's a forgery." For a second, the room tilted. My own son had signed my name. My heart didn't break this time, it froze. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just sat there staring at the loop of my counterfeit handwriting, feeling something inside me go still and cold. By the end of that week, I had rewritten. My will removed Ethan as beneficiary and appointed Patricia as executor. I sold the little jewelry Tom had given me to cover legal fees and bought a one-way bus ticket south, Florida. I'd never been there, but Helen swore the sun could heal things. Medicine couldn't. I packed light, just a suitcase, my husband's old coffee mug, and a promise to myself I might have lost my home, but I was done letting anyone else decide where I belonged. Florida greeted me with salt in the air and the smell of orange blossoms drifting from the groves. I rented a tiny guest house behind a larger home owned by Marge, a 70-year-old widow who believed margaritas and blunt honesty could fix nearly anything. "You need sun salt and distance from idiots," she said, handing me a cold drink my first night there. She was right. The days stretched quietly, filled with soft light and space to breathe. I started walking along the beach every morning, my bare feet pressing into warm sand as if trying to root myself again. Twice a week, I joined Marge at water aerobics class with a circle of chatty retirees who never asked personal questions. They didn't know I'd been betrayed by my own son, and I liked it that way. For the first time in a long time, I was simply Grace, no labels, no pity. A few weeks and Patricia called. "Good news," she said. "The court has accepted your complaint. The case is officially moving forward." Something inside me straightened. Maybe justice moves slowly, but it was moving. That afternoon, I opened my laptop to an unexpected email. The subject line read, "Invitation to appear on Morning View." The producer, a woman named Dana, explained they were doing a segment on women over 60 reclaiming financial independence, and Patricia had mentioned me without details, just a first name and a story worth telling. My first reaction was panic. I wasn't looking to be anyone's inspiration. My private pain wasn't a performance, but as I reread Dana's message, one sentence stayed with me. Your story could help others protect themselves. That night, I sat on the porch with Marge, the air thick with jasmine, and said quietly, if my silence protected no one, maybe my voice could protect someone else. She nodded. Then speak, honey, but make sure the words belong to you. 2 weeks later, under the bright lights of a New York studio, I told my story. Not every detail, just enough to show what it means to lose everything and build again. I spoke about fear, about starting from zero, about learning to handle your own money when everyone assumes you can't. I didn't mention Ethan's name. I thought I'd kept the boundaries clear. But halfway through the interview, the host smiled too brightly and said, Grace earns approximately $70,000 a year from her investments. It took me a second to process what she'd said. That number was never supposed to be public. I'd shared it privately, thinking it would be cut. My heart lurched. Ethan would be watching. When the cameras finally went dark, I smiled, for the crew shook hands, thanked Dana politely. But my phone started buzzing before I even left the studio. By the time I reached my hotel room, the notifications filled the screen. 99 missed calls, 61 messages, all from Ethan. Ethan's name flashed across my phone again and again until the buzzing became a kind of background noise. His messages blurred together, apologies, explanations, excuses. Mom, please pick up. I know I was wrong. I just want to talk. I didn't answer. Not the first day, not the second. On the third night, I barely slept. Patricia, my attorney, had called earlier to confirm what I already suspected. The real estate company had admitted that Ethan forged my signature. The notary had denied ever witnessing my signing. I could press criminal charges. Fraud, forgery, the words sounded heavy final. But every time I closed my eyes, I didn't see a criminal. I saw the little boy who used to leave hand-cut birthday cards on my pillow, crooked letters glued with too much glitter. I saw the teenager who'd cried when his father died, promising to take care of me someday. Now that same boy had sold my home behind my back. By the fourth morning, exhaustion made the decision for me. I sent a single text, "Meet me tomorrow. Seaside Cafe, 2 p.m. Come alone." The next day, the Gulf shimmered like glass. I sat at a corner table facing the water, my heart thudding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. When Ethan finally appeared, he looked older, shoulders rounded a few strands of gray at his temples. He hesitated, then walked over. "Mom," he said quietly, as if testing whether he still had the right to call me that. I nodded toward the chair across from me. "Sit." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Only the waves filled the silence between us. He was the first to break it. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. I met his eyes. "You don't protect someone by erasing their life." Ethan swallowed hard. "Laura said you were slipping, forgetting things, paying bills twice. She said it was time to close that chapter before it got ugly." "Close that chapter," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. That chapter was my home, Ethan. My life. He stared down at his hands. The wind caught the edge of a napkin, flipping it over like punctuation to his shame. If I hadn't been on TV, I asked, "Would you have called?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched until the only sound was the slow crash of waves against the pier. I leaned back. "I'm not pressing charges," I said finally. His head shot up, surprise flashing in his eyes. "But you're going to make this right. I want the full market value of my half of the house, plus $25,000 for the damage you caused, emotional and otherwise." He nodded slowly, relief and guilt fighting on his face. "You won't hear from Laura again," he murmured. "She's filing for divorce." I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel joy. I just felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when a storm finally runs out of rain. 3 weeks later, Patricia called to confirm Ethan had signed the settlement. The funds were transferred to my account that same afternoon. I stood on my porch in the fading light, the sea air brushing my face, and realized I didn't want revenge. I just wanted respect, and now, at last, I had it. A full year passed before I found myself back under the bright studio lights, only this time I wasn't there as the wounded woman from a cautionary tale. I'd been invited as a guest advisor for a special segment called Rebuilding Life After Betrayal. The host, a kind woman with tired eyes, asked me what forgiveness really meant. I took a slow breath and said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to let pain be your permanent address." The audience went still for a heartbeat, then someone began to clap. The sound spread through the studio like a wave, gentle, not dramatic. I smiled, not because I loved the spotlight, but because I had finally learned to speak from a place that was mine alone. After the show, I walked out into the Florida sunshine, that same warmth that had once felt like exile but now felt like home. My son Ethan lives here too, about 15 minutes away. We see each other from time to time, meet for coffee talk about weather work, small things. We never speak about the house or the past. Some wounds don't need reopening. They need quiet to heal. As for me, I bought a small oceanfront condo, the first home I've ever owned entirely on my own. It's modest, sunlit, and smells faintly of sea salt. I even named the Wi-Fi My Second Chance, because why not claim joy where I can? Most evenings, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, the ocean breathing below me, the sky painted in every color God ever invented. Sometimes I think about the night I came home from the hospital, stitches still burning, to find my life boxed up on the porch. That woman thought she'd reached the end. She had no idea she was standing at the beginning. If I hadn't lost everything, I might never have learned what I was truly worth. When the cameras rolled for the show's closing shot, I looked straight into the lens and said, "They took my house, but they couldn't take my worth." Then with a smile meant for every woman who's ever had to start again, I added, if this story reminds you of your own, share it. Because silence protects no one. Like, comment and follow Real Her Stories, where women don't just survive, they rise. And as the red light blinked off, I realized something simple and true. Home isn't a place. It's the peace you build inside yourself, and no one can sell that away.